There are nights in history that never truly ended. Nights where the sky turned red, where ink ran like blood, and where knowledge itself seemed to scream as it burned. One of those nights was February 1258, the night Baghdad fell. But this is not the story you already know. This is the story of something that survived, something that was never catalogued, never recorded, never meant to be found. And yet, it was. Tonight we uncover the legend of the last book of Baghdad. When the Mongol army reached Baghdad, it was not merely a military conquest. It was an ending. For centuries, Baghdad had been the intellectual center of the world. Scholars translated Greek philosophy, advanced mathematics, mapped the stars, wrote medical encyclopedias, debated theology, and preserved knowledge from civilizations long gone. Then the gates fell, and the fires began. Chronicles say the great libraries were thrown into the river, that the waters turned black from ink and red from blood. Whether literal or poetic, the symbolism is undeniable. Knowledge drowned that night. Or so we are told, but history is written by survivors, and sometimes by liars. Because in several scattered medieval accounts, there are whispers of something strange. Not a book that was destroyed, a book that was hidden. In 2019, a graduate student studying medieval Islamic philosophy in Istanbul purchased a damaged manuscript from an antique dealer near the Grand Bazaar. It wasn't unusual. Fragments of old texts circulate through private collections all the time. But this one was different. It was not a complete manuscript. It was a fragment, 47 pages, written in classical Arabic, heavily damaged by water and age. What caught his attention was the seal pressed faintly into the first page, a circular insignia bearing the words, House of Wisdom, Private Archive. The House of Wisdom was believed to have been destroyed entirely in 1258. There were no known surviving internal archive documents. And yet, here was one. But the real mystery wasn't the seal. It was the content. Because this manuscript was not a scientific treatise. It was a record, a confidential record, and it describes something called the final volume. The manuscript claims that in the final days before the siege, senior scholars convened in secrecy, not to save gold, not to save political records, but to protect the single book. The manuscript never names it directly. It refers to it only as the last book. Then, according to the text, this volume was not part of the public collection. It was restricted, locked, accessible only to select scholars who had sworn an oath, and its contents were described in deeply unsettling terms. It was not about law, not medicine, not astronomy. It was about the nature of time. The manuscript describes it as a study of the unfolding of creation, not as sequence, but as simultaneity. In other words, the book claims that past, present, and future were not separate. They were layered, and under certain conditions, perceivable. The fragment contains several warnings. One passage reads, "Let none read beyond the 7th discourse unless prepared to lose certainty." Another states, "The mind that grasps the structure of time ceases to belong entirely to the present." This is not the language of simple philosophy. It reads more like a containment protocol, as if the knowledge inside was dangerous. One section describes a scholar who studied the volume for 40 days in isolation. When he emerged, he reportedly said only one sentence: "It is already written." He then refused to speak again. He died 3 weeks later. No illness, no wounds, just silence. As the Mongols closed in, the manuscript records a final emergency council. The scholars believed the city would fall. They debated whether to burn the volume to prevent its misuse. But one senior figure objected. He argued that destruction would not erase what had already been understood, because if the book was correct, time was layered. Meaning knowledge, once accessed, could not be undone. Instead, they chose concealment, but not in the way you might expect. The manuscript states, "It shall be hidden not in earth nor stone, but where day does not reach." That line is repeated 3 times, where day does not reach. Most would assume this meant a cellar, a tunnel, a cave, but the manuscript includes a strange diagram. A geometric pattern resembling interlocking circles. Some researchers believe it resembles early cosmological models. Others argue it resembles something else entirely, the human eye. What if the hiding place was not physical? What if it referred to the inner world, the unconscious, dream, memory? One marginal note in the fragment reads, "The vault is not beneath the city." If that is true, then where?
Here is where the story turns darker. After the fragment was partially translated, the graduate student reportedly began experiencing severe insomnia. He claimed he was dreaming of corridors lined with shelves, of hearing pages turning in empty rooms. He described seeing symbols that matched those in the manuscript, but arranged differently. When asked what frightened him most, he said, "It's not that it predicts the future. It's that it suggests the future is remembering us." He withdrew from his program 3 months later. He refused interviews. The manuscript was acquired by a private collector, and since then, it has not been publicly displayed. Let's assume for a moment the manuscript is genuine. Let's assume there was a restricted volume. What could it possibly contain? Some historians suggest it may have been an advanced metaphysical synthesis, combining theology, philosophy, and early physics. Others speculate it was a radical reinterpretation of free will. If time is layered, then perhaps every decision already exists, not predetermined, but coexisting, like pages in a book already written, yet still being read. And what happens when someone reads ahead? The manuscript implies something unsettling. It suggests that awareness of future layers creates instability, that the human mind evolved to perceive time sequentially for survival, and breaking that sequence fractures identity. Perhaps that is why the scholars hesitated to destroy it, because destroying the book would not erase the structure of reality it described. The repeated phrase remains the greatest clue, where day does not reach. There are 3 dominant interpretations. First, literal darkness, a buried chamber still undiscovered. Second, spiritual darkness, hidden within esoteric knowledge passed orally, never written. Third, cognitive darkness, embedded within human consciousness itself. What if the last book was not hidden somewhere, but transformed, encoded into commentary, disguised within poetry, fragmented across disciplines? Or perhaps it was never a book in the traditional sense. Perhaps it was a method, a way of seeing. The final surviving page of the fragment is badly damaged, but one line is clear. When the city burns, the book closes. When the mind opens, it returns. No record confirms the existence of this volume. No catalog lists it. No excavation has uncovered it. And yet the fragment exists. Stamped. Water damaged. Real. If it is a forgery, it is an elaborate one. If it is authentic, then somewhere in the ruins of memory and history lies a text that was never meant for us. A text that claims time is not a line, but a room. And we are walking through it with a candle, seeing only what is directly ahead, unaware of the shelves behind us, unaware that someone may already be reading the final page. History tells us that Baghdad fell in 1258. But perhaps something else happened that night. Perhaps a decision was made, not to preserve knowledge, but to delay it, to ensure that certain truths would only resurface when humanity was ready, or reckless enough. The last Book of Baghdad may never be found. Or perhaps it already has been. Perhaps it is waiting, not in a vault, not beneath ruins, but in the quiet moments between seconds, where day does not reach. And if one night you find yourself staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep, and you feel as though something ancient is remembering you, close your eyes and do not turn the page. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe to Midnight Tales and like the channel. Sleep well, if you dare.